I'm super stoked on this to have these guys here. Professor Neftalie Williams is a lecturer of skateboarding business, media and culture at USC in California, as well as the academic skateboarding envoy for the United States of America. That makes him something of a skateboarding diplomat, which is quite cool. And Karl Watson, who's basically been shredding for 2 decades and continues to do so. And last year, Pal, a beautiful children's book about skateboarding. If you haven't seen that, go pick it up. So my pleasure to introduce Neftalie Williams and Karl Watson. Go on.
Thank you. So as we get started, yeah, you guys can hear me? Okay, good. I just want to look to the screen for a couple seconds. There's a couple things I just wanted to touch base on. One of those is we've been talking a lot about our intersecting identities, who we are, and the context of when we have conversations in. And so just as we're putting this together, the concept of young, gifted, and black and this piece of art that was up is amazing, yet at times problematic. And that is looking at young, gifted, and black. And what that means, what does that black mean? I did my PhD, or my PhD research has interviewed over 40 cultural intermediaries in skateboarding culture and people of color. So when you ask them, well, how do you identify? You get black, you get African American, you get I don't identify as any of those things, I'm just a human being. And so I kind of just wanted to highlight that for a moment. And so that we're all thinking about how we're all these different identities at the same time. And this does not work for some of those pro skaters that I talk to. And I get really, really adamant. I actually saw it on some of my feeds when I posted that. But I knew that was gonna happen because it's different, it's a different context. It's particularly being here in the UK, where you can say the black British, but some people at home will say, yes, I'm black, or I'm African American, or I just don't want to be anything.
Or human.
Right, right. And then the other thing I wanted to post there is, in this concept of to be young, gifted, and black, what are our rights, what are our obligations, what should we be doing? And so I wanted to also situate our talk and our discussion amongst other fights and battles that are happening with people of color in the United States and abroad. And so that's why I put you up with Colin Kaepernick, because he has taken a knee for all of us for the issues that are plaguing us in the United States. So I just wanted us to think a little bit outside of our skate culture and how we are part of those larger discussions. And again, context matters for all the things we were talking about earlier. Like the skateboard itself is an artifact, and we build a culture around it, right? And so it's not monolithic, and neither are we. So even when we get a little bit constrained about what skateboarding is, what it should be doing, what it should always be doing is being positive, right? And we should always be working together to figure that out, and we should sort through that. I'm very, very happy that this is going on, and I actually wanted to let you know this is part of another conversation that we've been having too.
So for me, when I look at skateboarding culture, I look at it as a tool for cultural diplomacy because it's organic. All these people are already together now, and we as adults and as academic institutions are supposed to embrace that and support that.
It was the rebel spirit, I think, that drew me into skateboarding. That spirit is very present in African-American culture. It's just that we weren't identified as skateboarders in the 70s and 80s for the most part.
That's what's so amazing about skateboarding is it brings all walks of life together. I was appreciated for my gift and my talent and my contribution to women's skateboarding, and I just so happen to be gay.
And the nature of the skate community is that the more you differentiate yourself by what you do, that's how you're acknowledged, by being distinct and then giving it back. And then we all grow together in this way.
That was an event we did at USC last year, and I just wanted to bring that in, so we're thinking about what we all could be doing with whatever cultural institutions that we're a part of, be it academia, your neighborhood council, whatever it is, there is some power in everyone in this room, and that's the question that's being asked. What can we do? We can all do something, and take a look at what's going on in your neighborhood or the places that power exists, and just try to do your part there. So I just wanted to bring that up. Now, my time right now, I had started thinking about this. This is an issue of strength skateboarding from 1999, which seems like a long, long time ago, and I definitely don't think I want to read the article again. But I wrote the piece for Black History Month for Strength Skateboarding magazine. And the reason we did that was because we were actively thinking about what does it mean to be a person of color in skateboarding. And the first thing I did, the first paragraph, the only part I remember, is that I said, I'm writing this for Black History Month, but I want to acknowledge Daewon, I want to acknowledge Gideon, I want to acknowledge everyone else that we're in this culture and we built this together. So this is a part of all of us. And so yes, we're in that particular instance, we're celebrating Black History Month, but we're all skateboarders of color, we're all skateboarders together, and we built this. Which brings you to just a little bit about what my PhD topic is, which is Color in the Lines, which is understanding the power, politics, and experiences of African Americans and U.S. ethnic minorities in skateboarding culture. And so through that, that is me doing all those interviews with the people who've helped build this, and to see how it is that they interpret what they've done and how that is something, or how that may be misrepresented in academic text, or how that might not be showing up at the skate park when you see kids who aren't behaving right or who aren't doing their job to build a community. So for me, it was really important to sort of go to the top and say, what were we doing? What were you trying to do? What is the ethos of skateboarding culture? And how can we tap into this to make our next generation stronger? So one of the things that was missing in particular in the literature in skateboarding academia were, where are all their stories? There's a lot of things that are based on the local what happens, but I really did want to go and see where all these people of color, why aren't they also in those larger discussions about Tony Hawk, or why aren't those faces the ones that are selling you soda or a box of cereal? Whose narrative is actually at play, right? What are those power struggles that are, or those power structures that are keeping all of our stories out? So in doing that, part of the discussion I've had is with our brother here, Karl Watson, who's been in the game for decades, who's done everything from his own brand with Organica, developing my first skateboard book, Karl's Causes, when he was already actively out doing philanthropy long before I even knew how to spell the word. When he was with LRG and making a multiracial, multi-ethnic team and making sure that everyone was represented. And even in the new image that he's using in his book, making sure that we're all included. This is what we should all be doing and what we should all be working on. So with that, can I please get a round of applause for Mr. Karl Watson? No, Karl, just
funny guy.
No, just to start it off a little bit, I am sure most of the room is familiar with you being part of the EMB and the San Francisco scene, but can you tell us a little bit more about your family life? Because we actually got some really, really interesting things during your interview for the PhD.
Well, my family life. I was raised in the Bay Area, California. I don't know who's been there. Yeah. And I thought I was in a big city until I came here, trying to skate through these streets. Insane. So my family life, I have an amazing father, an amazing mother, but my mother found out she was a lesbian when I was 3 years old. So I have two moms and a dad. So we moved to the city, San Francisco, and that's where I discovered skateboarding. So yeah, I have a very odd upbringing because that wasn't common when I was younger. So yeah, it really opened my mind up to different ways of thinking outside of the norm, just having a mother and a father. So it was hard at times, but I found my way around, and through skateboarding, I was able to be level-headed and find my true family.
Yeah. Now, I think it's important to step back and think about that for a second, because what year were you skating in EMB? Around what years?
I was skating in the early 90s. I started going there in 1990.
So I can tell you, for me, during 1990s, I was not thinking about same-sex marriage. I don't know if you were or not, but I'm just going to put it out there. But we know Karl as being this icon in skateboarding culture, but I really like thinking about the fact that you had this family life that you were showing to the rest of the skaters that were at town or in San Francisco.
Oh yeah, I mean,
because everyone knew, right?
I was hiding it for a while because I wasn't embarrassed of it, but the reaction I got from some people at school made me scared to tell my friends in my skate community. Mm-hmm. But once they found out, they fully embraced it, and yeah, I wasn't scared of sharing it with anybody anymore.
Now, you also told me that you were in San Francisco, but were you also in Oakland as well, I believe,
Yeah, I was
right?
born in Oakland.
Okay.
Then we moved to the city when I was 9 years old.
Now, I kind of want to just tap into what were your experiences of a difference between Oakland and San Francisco? And were you raised in a predominantly black neighborhood in Oakland? And what was the differences between them?
I was raised in a black neighborhood in Oakland. And
you saw that air quotes, right? Air quotes for black, right?
So yeah, when I moved to the city, it was like, there's so many different types of people that I can draw influence from. You know, they were, it was open and free, similar to what London is, what I see here. And so that really just made me stoked and showed me a different perspective.
Now, you'd mentioned when we talked before that it was a more black neighborhood in Oakland. And what did that mean to you, and how did sort of people treat what blackness was in that particular neighborhood?
Well, being black in Oakland at that time was playing basketball, playing football, and just kind of going with the norms of what being black is. So,
and this is black in African American context.
So picking up a skateboard was a very odd thing to do in that community. So once I started skateboarding, I began to get a lot of flack from that side of my community. And you know, my mom always encouraged me, just stick with what you're doing, believe in your path. And I did. And then, you know, those people that gave me flack, then once they, early on, once they saw me in the magazine, they circled back around and they were very impressed, and, they wanted to be nice to me then. They realized that all that stuff doesn't matter. Not all of them, but some of them.
No, I understand. I had a similar experience, and that also speaks to sort of the dual consciousness that's been spoken about, of being African American and being black in the U.S., about being aware of what the world tells you black is and what you should be doing versus what you'd want to do, and then also that weight that might put on your shoulders of caring. Did you feel that?
Of course. But skateboarding offered something different for me. The community that embraced all walks of life. Just like in my book, I say, whether you're short or tall. I can't even quote it right. You got to get the book and check it out. It's pretty much skateboarding embraces us all. Whether you're black, white, old, young, no matter. It breaks down all those social barriers: age, race, religion, Now
we've been having really deep discussions earlier of skateboarding culture and where there are the barriers. Because I want to put everyone's things just sort of articulated right, but it's basically saying we have an idealized version of skateboarding of what we think it can be, but it doesn't always live up to those expectations, right? Let's say we were talking about Jason Jesse and those issues, or issues of racism or sexism and discrimination that also occur in here. But my question to you is, do you feel that's inherently in skateboarding, or is those just elements of the culture that we should be working through, and what can we do about that?
Definitely not inherent in skateboarding. I mean, of course, we're rooted in punk rock and all that, but then you have the skinheads that are anti-racist in punk rock. So I mean, I definitely, I give thanks to the people that are more open and inclusive to let everybody into skateboarding. And of course, it was created by our European brothers in Southern California. So I give thanks for that. And but I don't think so.
Now let's talk. You just mentioned punk rock, and when did punk rock come into your sphere, and when did you see that there was sort of a set of values or norms that were associated with skateboarding or music? When did you see that? When did you know? Oh shit.
Well, punk rock has always been synonymous to skateboarding to me. So nowadays when I see of course I like hip hop, rap, whatever, but now when I see it with skateboarding in the videos, it just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, now I'm starting to get used to it a little bit, but I like the rock and roll when it comes to skateboarding.
Nice.
And what was the actual question though?
Well, I was just looking, when did you first discover that there was a culture around skateboarding? Because you know that there's punk, so how did you arrive at that?
When I started going to EMB and becoming part of the culture. And I give thanks to my friend Nick Lockman, which we'll talk about, who brought me to the EMB for the first time and introduced me to the culture of skateboarding. And I think early on I realized that there was more to it than just skateboarding. It was, that was your community. That was your, that's who you talk to. You're the older guy at the skate spot. That's, who you drew advice from and encouragement from.
Well, we were actually talking about that, the role of the older person at the skate spot and their ability to regulate and to say what should be going on. Can you tell us a little bit about regulating at EMB?
Well,
and who was doing that?
Well, it wasn't always the best stuff going on, you know, but,
Yeah.
you know, James Kelch, he was like the mayor of EMB, so everybody followed his lead. And
What was that lead like? Well, can you, you know, all things are the good, bad, and ugly, and, you know, we're amongst friends, right?
well, it was all about respect. If you came to EMB with no respect and you know, you didn't come there with a humble heart, you were going to be hazed or something, whatever. You're going to have your camera stolen, your bag stolen. So you had to come there with respect. You had to ease into it. If you're really good, you couldn't show it too fast, which was weird. If you did, like Jamie Thomas did, he came there, he flexed his muscles, a really good skater. Ollie Dagon's barefoot. Then people hated on him. They just didn't like him because he was better. I don't know if he was better than Kelch, but he was really, really good. I mean, I guess he was better.
That's okay. That's all right.
I hate to say it's better or worse in skateboarding because everybody offers something unique to the table, you know. But yeah, you have to come and be humble.
Well, even you talking to everyone offers something unique. Like Kelch obviously offered something where he was regulating and being sort of a father figure to everyone, for good or for the good and bad to that. But why did you think that it was Kelch who was the mayor? What was it in him that people saw and respected?
Well, he's an alpha male, one, and he was one of the early guys that started skating there in the 80s, the mid 80s. So he had this, he had the key, the key to EMB.
Nice.
Still does, even though he doesn't live in the city anymore.
Now, I want to ask you too, what was that community like at EMB as far as multiracial, ethnic diversity?
Man.
Like, what was going on there, and did that set a tone for you for what skateboarding could be?
I mean, it was a blessing because it was like a rainbow of all different races, all different nationalities. And I mean, that really just opened my mind up to the world at large. And that's why I thank skateboarding, because it showed me how vast the world is, but, you know, yet how small it can be when it comes to your mentality and your perception of, you know, your circle. You know, just thinking that's all there is just my community, my neighborhood. And so skateboarding got me off out of the block mentality.
Now, it was that sort of being off the block, and do you also attribute that to later traveling and being associated with skateboarding?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, my first trip was to Oregon, and I went to, it was a demo at a logging fair, like a logger fair. So I was the only black person there, and it was cool though. You know, early on I learned how to just kind of assimilate and just appreciate, and you know, it all depends on the energy that you carry that determines how you're accepted and how you're treated. So if you go there with a chip on your shoulder, like, I'm the only black person here, and you know, I'm gonna be, look at people wrong, then they're gonna treat you like, dude, this guy's tripping. But if you go there like, hey, like, enjoying the atmosphere, you're gonna be accepted. You live in New Zealand.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not many brothers out there.
Yeah. No, there's not a lot of brothers for sure, but brothers in the sense of African Americans. However, the Maori folks that are there, like, I can just give you a side note. It is amazing to drop into a country where all of a sudden I turn on the radio and you're like, oh, that's the hip hop I listen to. Like, what? This is all 90s jams? Like, what's up?
Wow.
I'm like, what is this doing here? Where's all this African American culture right here in New Zealand? I could have been anywhere else in the world, but I feel absolutely comfortable being there. And everywhere I go, where they're like, hey, brother, it's good to see you. So that's like,
feeling, right?
yeah, it's really nice. But it is also, you're aware of who we are and who we perceive ourselves as being African American abroad. I do know other people that I've interviewed have had a hard time with that. You're sort of leading with your heart first and being better. But there have been a lot of people who felt that's not their job. That's not necessarily their job. Their job is to just sort of put on, do a demo or put on a performance, and that's it. And they don't want to sort of deal with having to smile or put that energy.
Social issues.
Right. Yeah. And so I just wonder with you found the way to put that smile on and do it. But have you ever encountered other people and other people of color who sort of struggled with that?
Yeah, of course. I've traveled around the world with all different types of people, and some people have a hard time. Even white people, they have a hard time when it's they're in a room of people of color, like all Chinese folks. I don't want to just say I've seen it happen before, where people get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
No matter what nationality they are.
Even if we go back to that sort of card of thinking of being young, gifted, and black, and that can make people uncomfortable, right?
Yeah. When I first saw that, I was like, I'm not young, and like young, gifted, and black. That just seems kind of like hip hop, like bling bling, like young, gifted, and black. So I just kind of like, I knew you had a reason for it, because you're a smart dude. But I kind of like put it in the back of my mind. I was like, okay, we'll see what
and again, even that not being you, and there's just so many issues of sort of representation and identity. We're not one thing all times, and not every image. Not every image is in place or can represent everyone's experience. And that's something that I really found during the interviews, is that it is different for everyone, just like it's different for everyone in this room. And having that discussion is really painful for a lot of people to really talk about, like when they did encounter racism in skateboarding, being on tour, but also the good things that have gone on with skateboarding too. So it's been that part of it has been something to really work through, and I'm excited to sort of bring that out so that we can all sort of grow and get better. Now, one of the things that we've talked about too is your role in sort of entrepreneurship. In your early roles. Let's say you being with LRG and then being with Organica. Can we talk a little bit about that process of starting your own brand and being the face with Organica?
Well, yeah. It was an easy transition because I wanted to do something that represented me and my lifestyle. Hence the Organica name. I liked organic food, and when I turned 19, I started reading a lot of books and just broadened my horizon in terms of like what I put in my body. And I don't know if that made any sense, but I started eating better, started breathing better, started drinking more water, less soda, and that changed everything from that point on. So when I was in my early 20s and it came time to start a brand, it was a no-brainer to do.
Now, can I ask you something? What was that also in response to what was going on in skateboarding culture?
Not at all. Not at all. So Organica came first, then iPath came after. So that was a very different thing for skateboarding. Having shoes that were simple, not bulky, hemp shoes. Yeah. It was very different. So it wasn't the sign of the times.
Yeah. What other brands were really popping at that time when you launched Organica? Just to give sort of context for what skateboarding culture was doing.
Shucks, I don't know, man. I don't remember. That was a long time ago, guys. Early 2000s.
Well, did you feel that you were getting to interject something wholly new to skateboarding at that time? Did it feel like
wholly,
powerful? No, sorry.
Oh,
like unique, something unique to skateboarding.
Definitely. And I knew it wasn't going to be something big that was going to take over, but I just wanted to create something that was different, unique. Mm-hmm.
So when we step back to those larger conversations about what people of color are allowed to do, it's not just in skateboarding, him having a brand, that's just sort of skateboard talk. But for me, stepping out and actually going, when are there opportunities for people of color to actually be able to envision the world in their image, them having a place there and being in control and in charge of their own destiny?
And when you said allowed to do, see, that's the thing. We can do what we want to do, but it's all about knowing the power that you have within.
Right.
And not having that chip on your shoulder.
Well, and speaking of that, do you think that that's the way that people in your old neighborhood, let's say in Oakland, do you think that they thought that they had that power within them?
I mean, it depends. It depends on each person, but generally speaking, no, because people are stuck in their old way of thinking, the old mentality of being a victim, and one thing I tell the young brothers in California is that they have a chip on their shoulder, and if I notice it, I let them know that slavery was, of course, it was bad, but slavery, without that, the circumstances that led to our parents meeting would have never happened. So without those things happening, you got to give thanks for that. Now we're here. Yeah. Those situations led us here. So hey, take the chip off, man, and just go forward.
You want to operate from the now.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you feel that? How do they respond to that? Because that's a lot for them to.
Well, they're like, huh, okay. Then I let them know. I was like, actually, our African brothers sold us into slavery. So it wasn't like the white man went there and trapped us in cages and whatever. It was a bad situation.
I understand.
But it was a business transaction on both ends. Yeah. So when I tell them that, the chip goes away.
Yeah. Well, that just actually goes to, because there's a lot to unpack there, of course, which we can't do in this time for sure. but that goes to show that context matters, right?
Absolutely.
And that where you're at is a place of trying to empower them at this moment, and for them to not be looking so far back to feel, as you said, victimized, right?
Yeah, it's an old way of thinking.
Yeah, no, and I understand that. And there's, that sort of controversy and that discussion happens all the time in the communities of color, trying to figure that out. So the other thing that I want us to also think about is the way that people have talked about skateboarding has been, as we said, looking at where some of the flaws are in skateboarding. But I always want to put those things in context to say, like, the fact that Karl got to start the business with his own vision, his own imagery, his own things, that's unheard of anywhere else. And that's why I put that image of Colin Kaepernick up for those who do know American football in that space. Brothers and sisters, do not get that. You don't get to push back. You don't get to, this is not how it goes. And then when it is the case, you lose your job, they try to make it about something else. And that's in all of these discussions, right? So the ability to see people of color start a business or represent themselves, that really means a lot to me, because there's sort of a larger field of, oh, well, people of color are in, that means that there's tokenism, or that they don't actually belong here. But women have been in skateboarding since the beginning. People of color have been in skateboarding. The only skateboarding we know about included everybody to begin with. It's who took those stories out. And that's what my PhD is about, that's what my work is about, is going like, that's our day-to-day, what are those power structures that have taken that and removed you, or just like you said with the young brothers, is remove them from knowing what their history is, and what this thing in particular, when we look at skateboarding, what their role. And it really does, it hurts to look at things sometimes the way it's been talked about, because it ignores a lot of the people that are in this room. And it's sort of, as we said, this homogenized bullshit, right? But that's not necessarily us, and I want to always pull that out, right? That can be these other structures. And when do we placate our communities? When do we follow? I feel like we're skateboarders, and we should never ever be following anybody. That's what we have, the DIY that everybody's talked about, like that ability to say, fuck it, we're doing something else. That applies to every single thing we should do. So, sorry, doing a soapbox, sorry. But it's just one of those things where when we talk about skateboarding and skateboarding culture, it should always be progressive. We should always be doing, because that's what skateboarding is. Anytime it does something else, I feel like that's not being true to skateboarding. Anytime that we're pushing somebody in the corner or we're marginalizing whatever community, that's not skateboarding. That's it. Okay, sorry about that. So I wanted to talk about you shifting and putting together that team. You had a demo, and you had a pretty diverse team that was on organic. Can you tell me how you came to that and how you picked those people?
I mean, it was all about the energy that they possessed. Race was never a factor. It was all about the person that they were. Of course, skills was important too. But yeah, Delmo, he was from Brazil. Had Walker Ryan, he's a redhead from Napa.
Yeah.
It was very diverse.
Yeah.
So growing up, early on, a skate team was mainly Caucasian. Mm-hmm. Then you had your token black guy, mm-hmm, right? Mm-hmm. So now with Max Allure, moving forward, I reversed it. I have mainly people of color, than the token white guy. But it wasn't.
Is that changing the power?
It wasn't on purpose, though. It wasn't on purpose, because those are my family. I gave Tafari his first skateboard. Tafari gave Dre his first skateboard. I gave Jonathan his first real skateboard. And it's just the way it is. But back in the day, that would have been a really odd thing, I think.
Yeah. So you're actually just bringing that up. So first skateboards, there's some other people that everyone in this room are familiar with, but you've always been cultivating young skateboarding talent. Can we talk about some of those superstars that you grabbed?
Oh, man.
Who we all know?
I don't know what you're talking about. Nigel Houston. Not joking. Nigel, Zion Wright, Miles Silvas. And I didn't discover them. I just noticed their talents. And I gave them a platform to grow on.
What did you see in Nigel when you first started?
He had a really good back 180 at age 7. And I was like, man, the dread's flowing. He just kept doing that and building his foundation up. And his father was awesome at the time, and really powerful guy. Yeah. And I just noticed that he was determined and very polite to his family, and I like that.
So from what you're doing now, even then were you sort of actively interjecting more people of color in skateboarding? Were you aware and thinking about that?
No, I always tried to keep that element out. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about like the color of their skin, it was all about the content of their character.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Now, when you're in the EMB scene, how does that sort of play out as time goes on? Because there's some really heavy groups there, like the Deluxe Camp and other groups that are there. How does that play out as finding your own voice, and then like going to Mad Circle and developing. How did you do that within that context of so many different
I don't understand
skaters?
the question, really.
Well, how did you grow within the context of so many skaters, and like Kelch is the mayor? How did you find your own voice?
Well, just thinking outside of the box. Somebody's doing a backmade nose grind. I was like, okay, you can turn this way, and it makes it a unique trick. So I've never been the most talented skater.
Stop with that. We know that's not.
No, it's true. It's true, guys. It's very true. You know what I do? I think outside of the box, and I think how to simplify something to make it extraordinary. Like, not like my skating is extraordinary, but for example, the front side, nose slide, 270. It's an easy thing, but nobody thought about it before. How it works, So I mean, it makes it cool because nobody saw it. I like to think outside of the box, with everything.
Well, your style has been unique. Everyone in the room knows that. But you actually told us, or you told me during an interview that he said that he didn't feel that his style was dope. Now, I didn't know anyone. Right, see that face that he's making right now? But you said
it took a long time to cultivate a decent style.
Yeah.
I learned how to bend my knees. Finally.
Now, was that on your own, or were there mentors around you besides Kelch?
No, Keith Cochran, man. He was the owner of Think Skateboards, and after he saw all my footage for Think Crime, the video, he's like, "Hey, Karl, man, you got to bend your knees more." And I was very offended by that, but he was right. Yeah. So it's important to be honest to people and let them know what you think, because like if they have a booger in their nose or something on their face, tell them. Because then they're going to appreciate it. They're not going to forget it. If they don't bend their knees, tell them to bend their knees.
Can you tell us Keith's ethnic background?
He's Caucasian.
Okay. So were there a lot of non-people of color around you at that time who were in sort of positions of power for like Keith or running the magazines? Did you have that present? Like, was that the power that was there?
So positions of power, like in out of the crew, the family?
In skateboarding, as the culture, and the business side. Because I want to know a little bit about
really.
Like, what were you feeling?
It was mostly like a Caucasian thing, because I mean they created skateboarding and the industry early on, and like people like Fausto, he's the one that helped street skating come about, by just having his amazing magazine. Rest in peace to Fausto, but. Yeah, I mean, not really. It was very, Caucasian.
Okay. Did you ever feel uncomfortable in that spot when it came to time of talking about business because business is separate from skateboarding?
Yeah, not at all. I was just stoked to be a part of it, And without my amazing partner at the time, Troy Morgan, who's a Caucasian fella, without him helping me and showing me the ropes, I would have never gotten Organica off the ground. So
I want to sort of step back and think about the way that skateboarding has been talked about. We do have these organic relationships that are happening between people from different races or different ethnic backgrounds in that, because you did have the opportunity to have your own board brand, but it's you and your history and you being a person of color that interjects what that brand is. So I think that's just important as far as we go on to really understanding what these dynamics are, that skateboarding skateboarding can be beautiful, and there can be this merger of all the different cultures. And these are times when nobody cared about skateboarding then. Nobody cared about skateboarding. These were not conversations. So I kind of do take a little offense to people outside sometimes not understanding that skateboarding was not popular. And the fact that Karl was on a team, right? Karl's on a team that at the time might be mostly Caucasian, or that there are people of color interjected. Nobody forced them to do things, right? This is not Title IX in the U.S. This is not being politically correct. And I think that that's something that's been really wrong in the research, and that stuff sort of hurts us in the future, hurts us now, because people not understanding that people of color help build skateboarding culture. Then they think like, oh, it's just tokenism, or this is just, there is a black guy on the team, right? Whereas that's not what was happening. During those periods, you skated together because you wanted to skate together. And you built companies together because you wanted to, not because it's going to put you on the cover of Sports Illustrated, not because it's going to get you in the Olympics, right? So I just want to always pull back and think about like these larger things that are happening in a positive way. Now, you said you were traveling. You mentioned Oregon, but where else did you travel out that you liked and met other skaters?
Oh man, the first time I traveled abroad was I went to England. Came here for the Radlands
How
contest.
could you be late then?
I went to Northampton, a random little suburb over here. That's awesome. So I started going to those contests in Germany, then just all over Europe, then Asia. And yeah, it really opened my mind up at a young age.
What did you find being here in these other countries, being a person of color and being black on the team in England at that time? Did you feel welcomed? Did you feel welcomed in skate?
Very welcomed. Yeah. No bad vibes at all during that time.
Now, did you get any different vibes being out in the city, not with skateboarders? Like, did you feel any, or did you see any other tensions going on outside of that?
In terms of race?
Yeah, because, we operate in a bubble, right? Skateboarding, we're all in this together. But sometimes there's other things that are happening outside. Did you ever notice anything like that in any of your travels?
No, never.
Do you feel like that was because
I wish I had so I could share stories.
Stop. No, then that's good too then. Because the fact of the matter is that means skateboarding was providing something good for you and a way to navigate yourself through all these countries. So there's no right or wrong answer. That's what I'm really trying to get at, is the fact that this is fucking magical.
Skateboarding can change the world, man.
Yeah, Colin Kaepernick is fighting right now. You're telling me that you were already traveling and being in these other spaces with people who weren't from your background.
Personally, I feel if you don't give it energy, it doesn't grow. So right now in America, everybody's focused on race relations and this and that. It's just feeding into it, man. Yeah. You got to let it be. We're all human. One race, the human race.
Yeah, I hope everybody gets that.
I tend not to think about the race topic so much.
Hey, it's okay because you don't have to do that. It's a job of academics to do that. Right? That's our gig. That's what we're supposed to be doing. Having these discussions and figuring out ways so that you can just be you. In particular, one of the things, in my class, I feel like we have 3 discussions. There's three schools that are happening. Talking to skateboarders in the industry and saying like, hey, you should be friends with these cultural institutions, be it academia, your local museums, getting my students to understand that what they have is something valuable and that their presence is there, and that they should be continuing their studies, and getting regular skaters to go, we got to shake up everything. Where skateboarding is amazing. We should be in school, we should be in the museums, we should be involved with all these other spaces. So it's our job to just facilitate you so that you can just go skate.
Cool.
So I do want to open some of it up for if there are people who have questions with Karl, because I get to talk to Karl all the time. So are there any questions so far? Yes?
I got one right here. No,
you got
one? I'm kidding.
You came to the UK back in the Badlands days. You did encounter...
Okay, we'll pause for 1 second.
Okay. You said that back in the Radlands days, when you came to the UK, you didn't encounter the racism perhaps that you did back in your hometown. Do you have any understanding or reasons why you think that was the case?
Okay, good question. I think it was because they were more intrigued by us. Like, oh, these guys are skateboarding and they're black. They don't fit into the cultural norms of what they saw black people do.
Bearing in mind that there were plenty of black skaters in the UK at the time.
For sure. But I think the way we dressed was a little different, coming from E&B with like the size 40 pants. And, when I wore a 28. But, we did have one situation, but it wasn't because of race. We were staying at a bed and breakfast, and we came home late. And the lady didn't like that, so her son tried to fight us like the next day. So that was the only thing.
I guess you have a wonderful track record. That's fantastic. No, that's great. Do we have any other questions? No. Thank you.
Hi there. This is more of a comment I just want to make. To be honest, I just want to draw up your comments earlier about what you were saying about kind of having a chip on your shoulder and encouraging young people of color you meet to kind of like not have a chip on their shoulder and kind of come into things with a fresh kind of way of thinking. To be honest, I was very shocked by what you said. I found that really, really shocking. And I think it's quite dangerous actually as well. To be honest, I think in shifting the emphasis onto people of color to kind of forget what's happened and the history of cultural colonialism and slavery, the transatlantic slave trade, I think that's really dangerous, shifting it onto people of color to try and forget that. Because our societies are fundamentally racist, and we disadvantage people of color in very systematic ways. I've got some statistics in front of me, actually. And so a 2007 study found that 20% of white British people live in income poverty, versus 30% of black Caribbeans, 45% of black Africans, 55% of Pakistanis, and 65% of Bangladeshis. Right. So our society is fundamentally racist.
1 second with stats. I just want to. You all right?
Yeah.
I want you to.
So I think our society is fundamentally racist, and I think as a white person, I think I need to reflect on the position of privilege which I hold in actually stimulating that and creating a racist society. And I think putting the emphasis onto different groups is really, really dangerous. And so I want to draw up your comments and say that they're quite dangerous.
Definitely didn't want to negate that fact because, of course, I mean, we are in a place where people, that are white, privileged from, they benefit from, the stuff in the past. It's transatlantic slave trade, as you said. But I don't want people to forget what happened. I want people to move forward and live in the present. You don't have to forget it, but you can move forward and be a better person without, having that chip on your shoulder.
I want to add to that too, because that's perfect that you said that, because this is exactly the space where when people of color have to now figure out how we have to navigate someone else's privilege. You're talking about that, like I should be thinking about it. I should be thinking about white privilege and the ways that things have been gone wrong. You're right. You should be thinking about it. We should all be thinking about that. But I do understand what Karl is saying is also saying that that should not be the only thing. Because the truth is people of color and the person who is often maligned or misrepresented, they have to deal with that shit all the time. You can't tell me about it. You can't. You can give me a little bit of, here's the numbers, here's the stats, but we live that experience every day. So having to actually think about where you're at, we can't just think about that every moment. If we do, and honestly, we've never got to where we are now. It's having to have an eye on the prize and moving forward. So I want to start, again, context matters. This is why this is important. So I understand in the context of Karl saying, hey, not have a chip on your shoulder when you're encountering someone who is carrying a chip on their shoulder about other things. But that does not mean that you're going to ignore who you are. So that's great that you brought that up, because these are the discussions that people of color have without people, white folks, in the room, right? Like this is what happens. Is like that's extra stress on us to go like, oh well, we have to work through this. Yeah, we're always working through this. It is always the context. It always matters.
True. It is always something that we deal with.
The dual consciousness.
So just trying to help people move forward, and that's where I got that understanding. Yeah. And I like to share to help me move forward. So I like to share that with people that I see them having that chip on their shoulder and they're stuck in their paradigm.
And you said paradigm, and that's exactly some of the issues that I see in the research research done on race, because we're always trying to get our worldview across. Oh, you should be doing this. Like, hey, we should be navigating all of these spaces all the time and figuring out what works best for us. So he's offering a feeling of what worked for you, which is exactly what you said. Doesn't mean it's perfect. But the people of color or who are in this space are the ones who always have to do that. We have the burden of doing both things.
We have one more question over there.
Oh, yeah. Can I ask a question, please?
No, sir.
I have a two-part question. One, thank you for coming out here. I appreciate your insights. I have one comment and one question. First, the comment. I just want to note that in the stuff of intersectionality, not only completely omitted gender, and yes, we can talk about spaces that aren't specifically designated for conversations about gender, but it also omitted conversations about class. And even, I think with skateboarding, something that's really attracted me to skateboarding is the way that it's helped me engage or at least learn about different types of political coalitions. In the United States, it's replete with them. Black, Asian political coalitions, both in the country and around the world. Black, Latin. I happen to be from, my family's from the Dominican Republic. I identify as Black, but also as Latino. And it was interesting to me that there are no Black women, or not even the mention of like alternative Black identities outside of just the African American.
Wait, no, that's a good point.
And I'm just
actually it is, because Samaria's right here.
All right, cool.
Vanessa's right here. Kim Cespedes is right here. Stephanie Person, the first African American pro female skater. So I want to.
It's okay. I know I see the representation
we
there.
with
I
it.
wanted the participation and the integration of those voices into the narrative a little bit more. That was just a commentary. And just to offer that as like an invitation for us to think about how conversations about skateboarding, and particularly in African American context, and more broadly talking about blackness in the States, can offer us some insights about how these political coalitions in our community, in our communities and outside of them, can exist. I thought that was just a comment. The second thing was, I guess, in the context of this paradigm shift and trying to acknowledge this dynamic between the individual person and the choices they make, and how that provides a possibility for the individual to engage these kinds of structural issues of all these structural isms that we've inherited, that we didn't choose, but the existential crisis there, having to embrace them and contend with them, even if that's not our choice. I guess my question to you is like, so how do you think that what are some ways that you think skateboarding has the potential to help us transform our perception of difference as something that's not inherently antagonistic? And I ask this because I've noticed that in your line of questioning, oftentimes when you asked about race, there were closed-ended questions that asked me, that you asked, did you experience tension? Did you experience bad vibes? And that reflects to me a sort of perception of difference as a source of antagonism. That race is some part of why there's so much tension about race, in my perspective, is that we root the antagonism in that difference and not in and that puts that exacerbates the onus that's put on the individual to have to transform entire structures, right? And and that's a pretty loaded question. It's kind of going on and on, but there's several threads in terms of like the individual's relationship to the structural and back and forth. And also thinking about how we can use skateboarding communities, because they are spaces where we're seeing all these different interactions between different communities. But then I want to caution against this assimilationist ideology in which we have to forgive. Like, who's doing the forgiving here? You know what I'm saying? Like, if we're talking about power, and historically power has run this way, I see that skateboarding can shift it from this to this. And I was just wondering, like, if you could speak specifically on how skating transforms our perception of difference.
Well, I mean, for me, I would actually just go back to the slide and say that those are all people who would normally, you might think that they wouldn't be together, that they wouldn't be hanging out, and that they wouldn't have anything in common. So I actually look in the same way and going like, this is a space that we are all sharing, and it's giving us a reason to not think of each other as separate. So when that's why I started the conversation with, what is it to be black, right? These are all loaded words. They're all loaded spaces that we can pull apart and go, this part's wrong, and this part's wrong. So I'm always looking at going, well, where are we together? And that's where I start from all of this. So that's, for me, what can skateboarding do? Skateboarding can bring all of us together and give us the space to have these discussions. This is what my class is like every day. I mean, we sit with all my students, we pull out, I'm trying to think the best way to say it is, those earlier discussions and being able to write a comment and having the whole post being taken down, like we have that and we work through that. And those are people who are not skateboarders, or like some of them are skaters, the majority of them are women, and we're looking at what's wrong in that context all the time. So the entire class is built on figuring out what it is in skateboarding that we can use to make social change. So that's what I do.
And I feel diversity is innate in skateboarding. So, and I've been an early supporter of lady skating, and when guys would make jokes about them doing lip slides. And making jokes about them doing the trick, the lip slide. And and it always hurt me because I feel like they have a place in skateboarding. Mm-hmm. And one thing I like now is that the recent contest that was here in London, Street League, like the ladies' purse and the men's purse was the same. Yeah. And I was super stoked on that because it should be the same.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
I mean, I don't know if I answered the question. Hey, but you need to come up here because you're awesome.
Other questions?
One more right here.
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to ask, you said earlier that discussion of race relations in America and focus on race relations, you said it just feeds into it. I was just wondering if you could like expand on what you meant by that. What does it feed into? And, you know, in your opinion, if we shouldn't be talking about race relations in the way that we are, how should we be talking about them, would you say?
You know, I don't fully understand your question.
Okay, no, I'm sorry. Let me clarify. Earlier you said everyone's talking about race relations in America right now. Everyone has this huge focus on it, and you said that just feeds into it. So I was just
what is
like,
it?
Yeah, like what is it?
It
Like
feeds into the notion that we're different, and we're all the same. There's only minute differences between us, and we need to focus on what we have in common.
Can both be true?
Yeah.
Well, so
I guess both can be true.
they can all be true, and I just want us to not get bogged down into thinking that there's only this or that, because then we sort of get in this someone's right and someone's wrong. Just because he didn't say that part doesn't mean that context is wrong. Like, that's why I started this with context is so important, and I don't expect Karl to solve the world's problems, but I do expect skateboarding to bring us together to sort of have this dialogue. So I just want to make sure that that is productive. You know, that's all.
Thanks, guys, for the question.
You know, that's it. Because you know, and I mean that only on as a person of color, we're often get bogged down in the dialogue, and then we're not moving forward. And so I got what Karl was saying is like, yo, we are similar, and we should be moving forward. So I just want to, put that there. Other questions?
Yeah, I just want to speak because I just want to hear an English voice. Yeah, I think what you said about context is very true. Because these discussions are kind of mainly based on American-centric view.
Sorry about that.
Well, no, that's not because to an old 80s skater, America is California is the motherland. That's where you aspire to go to. That's where my fellow skaters like Bob and Steve Douglas went to be pros in America, because that's what we grew up reading, Skateboarder magazine, and then being part of Thrasher magazine. I remember writing to Thrasher in the old days before the internet, it's for youngsters, sorry, writing a letter to Thrasher after Steve Rocco wrote a piece about, there was a tour of America, and he went to Detroit, and he was too scared to come out of the car, and I was outraged by this. I wrote and said, yeah, Steve Rocco playing the scared little white boy act, you know what I mean? If he got out there and mixed with the locals in Detroit, you might have met some rad people and who picked up some good skaters, but instead he's playing the thing. So it's bigger than skateboarding. All these discussions are bigger than skateboarding, but they're within skateboarding. There's a lot within skateboarding. Like people will, just a word of advice to Karl. How do you work this thing? All right, what does Karl, you know, it's all very well for people to criticize him for how he sees his positivity in dealing with potential problems in race in America. But over here, if you say the term chip on your shoulder, all right, re-up. If you say the term chip in your shoulder, that's a classic white racist statement. So that's not going to go down well over here. Right. Just a bit of advice.
It can go for both sides, though. Like you said, so if Steve Rocco, if he had approached the group of guys in Detroit without the chip on his shoulder, for both. He would have found the nice people.
Of course.
Like, for example, if you go into Oakland, where I live at, and you approach a group of guys, even for me, so black on black, if I have a notion that they're going to be a certain way, they're gonna perceive me differently when I approach them. But if I go there with an open heart, without a chip or without something, in the back of my mind, like they're gonna act a certain way, I get perceived better because I'm there with an open heart to receive what they have. And then they're 9 times out of 10, they're nicer.
I fully understand what you say.
Black,
I fully understand what you say, but as I say, saying that in this country, chip on your shoulder is akin to walking into America with a "Make America Great" hat on.
See, we didn't know
People are not going to understand the context. I fully understand.
Thank you for that, because that's important. That context is totally different.
I won't use that out here. Thank you.
That context is different. Yes.
Thank you. Really, just to pick up on the comments that were made earlier by this woman, really, I think, beautifully and succinctly. Just to add to that, I think part of the problem with this chip on the shoulder narrative is that it typically leads to the erasure of black women. that narrative that it doesn't it's not conscious of the patriarchal structures within which it's located. And so, yes, there are black women on this slide, but I think that part of the problem is that they don't feature in the conversation, and that kind of structural logic of the conversation is part of the reason why they don't. And I understand that kind of open heart approach, but I think we have to be conscious that in approaching solutions to the problems, we're not perpetuating certain problems, right? Our solutions don't perpetuate the erasures that already exist. And I think part of the reason why they may be welcoming that approach is because it doesn't challenge some of those underlying structural dynamics. So just to be conscious of that.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, no,
I'm not one to challenge. I'm one to, I hate to say it, but I assimilate.
Yeah.
Because that's the way you move forward in my heart.
And I think
I don't like to challenge too much.
And to think that what I think is great about this conversation is that there's supposed to be more than one version of everyone, of what blackness is, of what it is, or a different version of how we struggle, how we do these things, right? How do we work through this? Everyone in this room has a different way and a different strategy that they employ in order to move forward. I think that was great that you were talking about some of the sisters that were on there. And I felt that that's really important because no one on this slide is talked about in academia. So where I started from, I was not looking at doing anything on race in skateboarding or diversity in skateboarding. I had already, in my world, I had already moved on. I was already moving on to other things and looking globally. I work as skateboarding as a tool for cultural diplomacy. But then I look and figure out no one has looked at any of these people. So even these large discussions we're having of like how we move forward, they're not even there, they're invisible. They're absolutely invisible. Well, great. Well, that's what I mean. There's the cover right there, right. Why isn't Jamie the one that's being talked about as what is skateboarding culture? So for me, we had to step back and do this, to start from here and go, they haven't even answered were people of color involved. Never mind were there women involved, was there anyone? They're not in the research at all. They're only tokens. So everyone up here has been a dupe. This is the way that they're described. Their place in, like let's say Kareem Campbell's placement in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. Oh, he can't really be a skateboarder. He's black. That's what this is where all this work and research has pointed. It has omitted all of these folks. And so for me, that's the biggest strike on all of us is we don't have a voice. We're talking about we're deep in the semantics. We do not exist at all. So it's not the sisters don't exist, brothers don't exist. In the literature on skateboarding culture, it's not present. So we had to start from here, and now we're moving forward and sort of bringing everyone's voices in. I mean, that's the thing that hurt me the most about it. I shouldn't be doing this for my PhD, but they don't know who Jamie is. They don't know who Stephanie is, right? They don't know who Jaron is, even though this goes back to my earlier point. Even though we all built this culture together, we're totally missing from the narrative. Now, for those of us who have been involved in skateboarding, these are all our icons. We've been here this whole time. But that's not the way the world has looked at skateboarding. And that's not the way that the research has looked at skateboarding. So I got to solve this and put all these voices out so then we can really get down and look at where those strategies and how we move forward. I do those strategies every day. That's what we do. But this shit is it matters to me. This is your history. And you are not there. This is the thing we love. We're about to go to the Olympics, and if I hear one fucking reporter say, what does it feel to be like a black skateboarder? I'm gonna go crazy, all right? But this needs to get done so that we can be there, right? Because we should all be able to have our own opinions about how we move forward. You can have zero opinions about shit if you're not there. And so that's what's wrong when we're challenging structures and what's the power. Academia determines what we're looking at all the time. We never encounter any other academics, but damn straight, somebody's writing about your life. Somebody's writing about you and using you as a way to talk about, as we said earlier, a theory or a way that they want to perpetuate themselves in the world. I'm not anti-academia, as you know, but I'm just saying we should all be active, and that's why I want every student, every person in this room, if you're not going to school, to be going to school, so that we can always be having these discussions and move forward. But to actually have any conversation where we're not there, it's a lie. It's other myths. These are the power that's been pushed on top of us. So this is where we start. So I just wanted to say, I'm not having the answers, but I'm starting to get us a space so we can at least have a fucking question. Sorry.